my first one says this. Can you talk a little bit about gangs? How big of a thing is this where you're doing ministry, and is there anything you do different to reach this culture? Now, people know where you're from, and so they kind of know your background a little bit, and that's why they're asking some of these questions.
Yeah.
And so that's why I pointed out to the viewers your community and your culture that Calvary Toppenish is in. So I'll just let you speak to this question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So God is doing some really awesome things in and amongst the gang members. At least we're seeing at Calvary Chapel Toppenish. I see the gang culture a lot like the hippie culture. So, in Pastor Chuck's days, the hippie culture was an outcast society, right? They were being shunned. People just kind of like, man, dirty hippies, whatever, just leave us alone. And a lot of people have approached the gang problem that way. And the gang problem is, man, it is big, especially in the area where I'm at. Toppenish, 8,500 people. I think the last I heard, there was over 300 documented gang members in our little town of Toppenish. And that's not including, Wapato to the west or Granger or Sunnyside, which, the number goes way up.
Right.
And so that's why, Toppenish is in the headlines a lot, is because it's kind of centered. You have, the gangs to the west and the gangs to the east, and even the gangs to the north, and they all come down, and for some reason, they all want to drive through Toppenish and shoot at each other,
Yeah.
So it's been pretty bad that way. A lot of different gangs, a lot of different sets. But so society has said, you know what, we don't want to deal with that problem, so they leave them to themselves. But man, at Calvary Chapel Toppenish, man, I'm not even kidding you, bro. There is at least 5 sets, and I'm talking about sets that were represented, where men have now left those gangs behind and are now coming to Calvary Chapel Toppenish. And these guys are born again, they're saved. Some of them are actually, I would call street scholars, man, where these guys are studying Spurgeon and they're studying, Tozer. And these guys, even they fill in for me on Sundays and Wednesdays. And it's like the church doesn't miss a beat, man, because these guys love Jesus, they love the word, and they love God's people. Now, so how is God working that out in there? Are we doing anything different was the question. And in reality, we're not, but it's this. Just like what happened in Chuck's day with the hippies, when a few of the hippies got saved, they went back out into their culture, the hippie culture, and witnessed. Same thing's happening with these guys. These guys are getting saved, and they're going back to their neighborhoods, back to their old homies, back to their old friends, and just bringing Christ to the culture. And so we're seeing that, man. I'll talk to a few things real quickly. I'll give you an example of this happening. So we do a meet and greet. I don't know if you guys do that here at Calvary Tri-Cities, where after worship, we kind of have like a minute, 2 minutes sometimes, where everybody can get up out of their seats and go say, hey, what's happening? Hello, welcome, glad you're here. And so we do that in our service. And one of the times I went down to kind of shake hands with a few people, and one brother comes up to me, he's like, hey, man. And he points over across the room, and he says, is that so-and-so over there? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, bro, you're not going to believe it, man. He goes, this is a trip. He goes, I can't believe we're going to church together, man. He goes, we used to shoot at each other's houses, man. We used to shoot at each other's houses, and now here I am with my wife and kids, and there he is with his wife and kids. And then he asked how long he's been coming. I said, oh, he's been coming for a little while. So we do 2 services, so, if you come to the 9 o'clock service, you don't know who's coming to the 11 and vice versa. So They happen to be at the same service at the same time. And so that's just one example of that. But one of my elders is actually a former gang member, and he's a professional barber. And so what happened with him is one of the folks that come to our church is a Yakima County Superior Court judge. And she works a lot with broken families and gangs and with the drug court, thing. And so they got into a conversation one day, and she said, hey, would you be interested in going to the juvie once a week and sharing your testimony with these guys and maybe just hanging out? And he gets free haircuts now. So on Wednesdays, one of my elders, former gang member, grazed by a bullet in the head. Dude's tatted on his neck, and you can tell he's banged. Yeah. But now on Wednesdays, he goes into the juvie. He's sitting in there with teenagers. Some of them are in there for murder, right? Some of them are in there for some pretty bad things. And he's in there giving free haircuts, sharing his testimony, brings Bibles with him, gives them free Bibles. Of course, awesome, there's a CO there, corrections officer there, just making sure everything's good. But God's opening doors like that so that we can make a difference in a part of our society, a culture within our society that's been shunned and been just kind of like, dirty gang members, low lives. But I think what's making the difference, bro, is because those kids are looking for family, right? They're looking for family. They're looking for somebody who actually loves them and cares for them. And that's what they get when they come to Calvary, bro. It's pretty awesome.
I had a sneaking suspicion you were going to say that just because I've been around Calvary long enough. It's you don't change church. You just have a love or a desire to love the people where you're planted at, and then you're going to adopt, just like you said with Chuck, where the Holy Spirit wants you to adopt to reach them. But you don't change church. You don't change the gospel. You don't change anything.
Nope.
You get those people with a relationship with the Lord, and then the gospel spreads by them just infiltrating where they go in the world. It's the same story, same song and dance everywhere.
Bro. Same story. They come and they're like, man, I didn't know the Bible could be taught so simply.
Yeah.
It's like I understood it. Some of them grew up maybe in religion or whatever, or, maybe heard stories, but they're like, man, this is just broken down simple, and I can apply it to my life, man. So the Bible is understandable,